Hello, and welcome to the Pro Series Conversations from CheckBox Pro. My name is Missy, and I'm the founder of CheckBox Pro, where we help school leaders become their most efficient and effective selves by matching them with ed-focused executive assistants. Each member of our team has over 10 years of experience in the education sphere, and though we may consider ourselves pros in some areas, we can't be an expert in every area. This is why we're excited to bring folks working in the education space to offer tools, tips, and insights to make the life of a school leader even more sustainable. Today, I get to talk to one of my very dear friends, Kalli Harrell. I've
Hello.
known Kalli for about 10 years now, and she is someone I highly respect both personally and professionally. Kalli was born and raised in a small rural town in Tennessee, so you may see some Southern accents coming out. She moved to the big city of Memphis, Tennessee for college, where she attended Rhodes College and graduated with a degree in neuroscience. After graduation, she started teaching sixth grade science at the Soulsville Charter School and achieved level 5 growth as measured by the Tennessee Value Added Assessment System, or what is commonly called TVAS. Following her time in the classroom, she worked on the leadership team as a dean of students and a dean of curriculum and instruction. She now serves as an instructional coach, science content lead, and adjunct professor with Memphis Teacher Residency. She directly coaches 21 teachers in 6 neighborhood schools, focusing on highly effective teaching in order to ensure equitable education for students in Memphis. Kalli, thank you so much for being here.
It's so good to be here with you.
I love it. Okay, so as I was preparing for this conversation today, I was having so much joy recalling memories of our time together in Memphis. I also was just reminded of the many kindnesses you've shown to me personally, right? And just like you've extended to others over the years. So one example for our listeners was there were several days leading up to like my family's move to Texas.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, again, for listeners, Kalli and her family, her already family of 4, took us in since our house had been rented out. And by us, I mean me, my husband, our 1-year-old daughter, our godson, and a 70-pound golden doodle.
It was fun.
Allie, like
I
not
just
just
think
anyone
it's
would
one
do
of the
that.
best memories in this house.
I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, you did house us again when we came back and visited. So like, I guess we didn't
We
sign you off.
we expect to do that. And now, it's just an even bigger crew that we would be meshing together. So why not?
About to say, yeah, there's been a few additions. So
Just a few.
so all that to say, I'm chatting with a very high caliber and beyond kind person today. So I'm very excited.
Well, thank you for that.
Okay, so let's go back to where your career in education started.
Yeah.
So graduated from Rhodes College, which is a very prestigious liberal arts college, and it's
Yeah.
located in Memphis, and you graduated with a bachelor's in neuroscience.
Yeah.
Friend, like that degree is no joke. Okay. So
No.
tell us a little bit, what were your plans initially post undergrad?
Yeah, my plans and dream had always been to work in medicine, really was planning roads, medical school, be a doctor. My heart was very in pediatrics with psychology or neurology. That's sort of where neuroscience came in, was to get a good foundation there. After 4 years in college, I was on the verge of a wedding the summer after I graduated, and just knew that if I went straight to medical school, I was just feeling a little burnt out of school, to be honest. And I did not want to get somewhere I had always wanted to be and hate it just because of being tired, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
um, at the time, the big moves in education reform, Teach for America, was really booming. I had friends who were going through Teach for America. I did not myself really want to go through that program. So in my mind, I was just going to do Teach for America without Teach for America. And I babysat for a family during college that had a lot of connections at a charter school here in Memphis. And I figured if I'm not going to go straight to medical school, I'll do something with purpose for a few years and I'll go teach science or math. That sounds like a good use of time. And now I think this is year 14 and I am still in education.
So 2 years became 14 years.
Yeah, here we are. I fell in love.
I mean, and middle school. middle school science of all things. And all the middle school teachers out there and people who work in middle school, like they really are like love, like they are such a fun group and age, that they're challenging.
They are, and my mom gets a kick out of it because she was like, "You hated middle school. You cried almost every day after middle school, and you choose to walk in there every day." And I was like, "I know. What are the odds?" But I loved it. I taught in 6th grade for my 6 years in the classroom. I
Wow.
loved the transition between elementary school and middle school, being able to really embrace executive functioning skills, and they are like starting to grow up. They kind of come in as little kids, and by the end of 6th grade, they're definitely full-fledged middle schoolers. And it was just so fun. And the school I worked at also had a high school, so I got to see my kids go from 6th through 12th grade over
That's cool.
time, which was just a really cool perspective to have. Yeah, I ended up teaching siblings and cousins, and
Yeah.
so fun, just really, really deep family connections that came from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I am familiar with that school, and it is a really impressive culture and just like community that is, yeah, they all go there and they love it. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's really fun. So okay, so you teach for 6 years
Mhm.
and then you transition into a leadership role,
Yeah.
first as the dean of students and then as that dean of curriculum and instruction. And you're there for another 6 years, I believe, or
Yes.
close to
Uh-huh.
it, and
Yep.
on the admin or the leadership team,
Mhm.
um, all still within the same school. So
Yeah.
what made you decide to leave the classroom?
Yeah.
Love it.
It was a hard decision. I had been at the time our team leader is what we called it at Soulsville. So it's like the grade level chair. I had been that for I think 4 years, and I loved it. I loved leading a team of teachers. Again, that transition from elementary school to middle school. And for us, it was like transitioning into your next 7 years, right? We're
Yeah.
really laying
Yeah.
this foundation to be successful here. I just had so much fun, and I was really starting to desire to be able to impact something beyond just me and the other 4 teachers on my team. There was a big leadership change coming up at school, so it seemed very much like personal goals and timeline might be aligning, but I struggled to even fathom leaving my classroom. That had been like my first baby, was my
Yeah.
6th grade classroom and curriculum. And thankfully, stars aligned. I was a mentor teacher for Memphis Teacher Residency that year. So I had an incredible resident who is still a very dear friend of mine, still working at Soulsville herself.
Oh, that's great.
And so the idea of being able, if she was interested in taking over 6th grade science, then I could foresee handing that over to someone that I trusted, and taking a leap into leadership. And so it all worked out, um, at the time to make that switch. So really just the desire to have a broader impact than
Yeah.
6th grade team really spurred on the desire for a change.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, it's you are really well, which we'll get to, but just like the talent and the content knowledge you have, and just like to be able to kind of spread that to all the classrooms across the middle school is, yeah, it would make an impact. I don't even know how many folds, more than twofold. So
That
that's,
was the hope, right?
yeah, yeah. Okay, so I would imagine transitioning from teaching to leadership is, I mean, it's already challenging in and of itself for all the reasons you just mentioned, right? Like, it's like, this is your first baby. This is a comfort zone. Like, you know how
Mhm,
to do this,
mhm,
especially after 6 years. Like, it's hard
mhm.
to go from like, quote unquote, expert or a pro in one thing. And it's like, and now shift. Like, we're going to just be a newbie again, right? Like, we're going to go back to first year teaching,
Yes.
but now in leadership. So, but on top of just, that normal thing, because you stayed within the organization, all of a sudden now peers are becoming the people you coach and or manage,
Right.
right? Like, your
Mhm.
schedule is now no longer bound by the bell schedule.
Right.
Your domain, right, is much larger than those four walls of your classroom, which we talked about. So for you, what was the hardest part about leaving the classroom and stepping into the leadership role?
Yeah, I think, looking back, it was so hard that first year. Despite all of the great intentions within our school to help those of us who were going to be transitioning into leadership roles, um, there was a lot of method put in place to give us some transition time. But no matter what, when you're trying to prepare for something that's upcoming while you're wrapping up classroom responsibilities, there's
Yeah.
just never enough time to
Yeah.
get that perfectly right. So that first year was very much trial by fire and trial and error, which made things very hard, much
Mm.
like a first year of teaching.
Yeah.
You're just kind of figuring it out as you go. I think what also made that year difficult is after 6 years in the classroom, I had really figured out how to organize my time well, how to manage my time well. And I mean, you alluded to it in your question, but that all changes as an administrator. So
Yeah.
even from just the very basic, like the way I planned my week I had a template that I printed out, and every Friday I planned my upcoming week. Like that didn't serve me well anymore because that is not what my days revolved around. So it was trying to figure out like, okay, my daily schedule is just kind of out the door. How do I even prepare as well as I can? And that took time to figure out. So it really was just trial and error, learning a whole lot. As dean of students, I was over school culture and school discipline. Thankfully, I had a fellow dean of students, so we were marching through it together and figuring things out together. But it was a lot of being willing to ask questions, figuring out who to go to. Like as a teacher, I knew who to go to for certain things.
Yeah.
As an
Yeah.
administrator,
Yeah.
it's a whole new set of people that you learn to go to within your building and also at the district level. So big transition for sure. Um, Grateful for the experience. I definitely think um, my colleague, who is the other dean of students, I think we can look back on it now and see all the ways that we would prepare someone else better, knowing what we know now,
Yeah.
because it was just a huge transition at the time for the school.
Yeah. So this wasn't on my list of questions, but and it's obviously part of the work that we do and is something we see with our leaders all the time, right? Is it's just like best laid plans for a schedule, just get blown up every single day. We have a kid who's really struggling. We have a disgruntled parent. We have an external partner who's like, I would love to pop in and just see what's going on. And you're
Right.
like, cool. Okay. Yeah. 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 Like you're in back to back check ins, all the while knowing that your inbox is filling up with emails.
Yep.
And at some point, like all the action items and all the things from those meetings and those inboxes have to
Mhm.
get done.
Mhm.
So I know I mean, you might have to go back to back in the day, like,
Uh-huh.
but when you were walking the halls and trying to think through, like, okay, how do I get stuff done as like a school admin and like I mean, and again, 1 to 2 things that you're just like, okay, I wish I could have gone back and told Callie back then, like, hey, just do X, Y, and Z, and it will help you with getting just all the things done.
Yeah. I think the two things that come to mind, one, we constantly were telling ourselves, and I think now with more wisdom and experience, I would have been able to hold fast to it more, but was just be in classrooms as much
Mm.
as possible. Kids seeing you in classrooms, you getting to see kids, you getting to support teachers, like it really would just, I believe, alleviate a lot of the fires that felt like would constantly come up.
Mhm.
So being in classrooms as much as possible as a priority is something, again, I was telling myself, but I wasn't always able to hold fast to. And the thing that towards the end of those years as dean of students that did become helpful is blocking off time in my day to just do some of those tasks. So
Yeah.
an hour a day to sit down and like catch up on email teachers
Yeah.
follow-ups for a situation that you've handled, right? Calling parents. And my colleague and I would not schedule those times at the same time because we could
Mm.
just be offline
Yep.
in the building at the same time. But we knew that we needed to support one another in having some time to take care of those tasks because you can't just be in classrooms all the time and not create time for some of the back end
Yeah.
um, paperwork side of things. So
Yeah.
that was really helpful. And I think that that just still remains true as a working adult, having time blocked off to take care of certain aspects of the work that just have to get done. Um, and I think being in a school building, you realize what the rhythm of a day is. And of course, there are always things that are going to come up, but being able to find some times in the day that you can block off time and have someone else counterbalancing that with you, I think is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And like in addition to that, I think what we tell our leaders too is like, you have to get those things done, right? And but you also need to know yourself well enough to figure out like, so I'm a little bit wired more introvert, right? Like, so I need, because I'm an introvert, my energy level for people is going to be at its highest in the mornings. Like I'm not tapped out yet, right? So kind of even thinking about just you personally as a human, right? It's like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm an introvert. I might need to have my check-ins in the mornings when my energy level is its highest, my people energy is its highest, right? And then I block out the afternoons to maybe once
Yep.
I'm a little bit more depleted, having that solo time to get the task done. Or yeah, maybe you're the extrovert and it's like, yeah, you need to flip those because you need to have like your think time done in the morning because after that you're
Right.
going to need to be pinging around to just like get filled up, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yep.
so I think that's really great advice too. It's just like trying to think through and blocking that out and just being strategic when you think about your week as a whole.
Yep.
Um and you're also not the first to say about the getting in the classrooms. It
It's
really does
huge.
blow. I don't know why it blows my mind still, but I mean, it is where most of the people we're talking to, it's their first love. Like it
Mhm.
is where they found
Yes.
the most joy. And
Yep.
so finding, even if it's just doing some of those action items from the back of a
Yes.
classroom, like
Yes.
having your computer out and just
Yeah.
getting to kind of, passively get some of that energy
Yes.
from classrooms and teachers
I
and be
think
able
it's
to like,
huge.
oh, when something pops up, it's like, whoa, whoa. No, we
Exactly.
don't do that.
Being able to, help a situation not escalate in the moment,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
mostly just balancing, like, being in education is hard. It doesn't matter what your role in education is. I did find once I left the classroom, it was mostly all hard all the time. And so if I wasn't in classrooms, I was missing out on the joy and the thing that I fell in love with.
Yeah.
It's definitely, there's like part selfish, like I just want to be around kids and be around the joy of learning and teaching. But also, I think that's just so important for admin to continue to have a feel and a pulse for what it's like in the classroom and
Yeah.
what culture is looking like in
Yeah.
school. I know it's easy to say, like, these are our procedures and these are the things that we hold fast to. But if you're not in the classroom, you can't see if that is actually serving students best, if it's actually
Yeah.
being implemented best. So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it would be something now that wouldn't just be the thing I'm constantly telling myself, like, get in classrooms more, get in classrooms more. I would actually schedule my day and
Yeah.
hold fast to that. And so my
Yeah.
computer would need to be with me. It just would, like you said, there would be some times in a room where I need to be responding to an email or prepping for an upcoming meeting. But that can be done from the back of a classroom the same way it could be in my office.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Okay. So after 12 years of working in that school, 12 years. Is
Yeah.
that right? Yeah. Six
Yeah.
teaching and then
That's,
six as admin. So 12 years. That's the math. That's the math. Math works.
that's the math. Math works.
Uh, so then you recently made the decision to change
Yeah.
roles. So
Mhm.
you are now working as an instructional coach and a science content lead at Memphis Teacher Residency, which you mentioned briefly of having had a resident
Mhm.
in your final year of teaching. Yeah, because
Yes.
then you
Uh-huh.
transition out.
Uh-huh.
And just for our listeners, like Memphis Teacher Residency, we're gonna refer to as MTR probably moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Memphis Teacher Residency is a little bit of a mouthful, so MTR. So just tell us a little bit more about the mission and vision of MTR.
Yeah. MTR, we're actually celebrating our 15th anniversary this year, which has been really fun
Wow.
to be on staff and be getting a chance to celebrate that. Memphis Teacher Residency was really born out of the knowledge that in our city, there is a vast difference in student success depending on what area of the city you're in. And we feel very strongly that inequity in education is the most important civil rights issue right now in our time, and it is having a devastating impact on our city as a whole. So MTR is all about doing what role we can in repairing that. And we believe that training highly effective teachers to serve in some of the most under-resourced schools in town is a way to ensure that kids are getting access to equal education. So we really view our work and our vision as that communities are able to be restored and live with dignity and peace with one another, which is a beautiful hope and dream for our great city. And we do that through a Christian context. And so what our view on the gospel is that we love our neighbors as ourselves, and that for our work is through education. So we are training up teachers and providing support for them. They commit to 4 years of teaching in under-resourced schools here in Memphis. Their first year is a residency, much like you would think of a medical residency. They are in a highly effective teacher's classroom for a whole year, being trained by that highly effective teacher, being coached by them. They're also earning their MAT degree through, it's conferred through Christian Brothers University here in town, but we run our coursework in-house. So they are doing that alongside their residency year. And then once they graduate, they are able to be placed in some of these high need schools, and they commit to working there for 3 years. And when that commitment is over, their master's degree is paid for. It's free for them. And then many of our grads and alums continue to have a positive impact on education here in Memphis, which is really cool to see.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I've worked with a few MTR residents and teachers, and I've seen it, and yeah, it's great, and they're doing some really impactful work. So, okay, so then your role.
Yeah.
Instructional coach and science content lead. Just tell us a little bit more about that, what it looks
Yep.
like at MTR.
Yeah. So during the residency year, I mentioned they're with a mentor teacher, being coached by that mentor teacher. They also have a residency coach as well, who is in their classroom. Oftentimes weekly, things wean off as the year goes on, but they have really shoulder to shoulder support with that mentor in their school building, and then with their residency coach through MTR. And once they graduate, we refer to it as grad years 1, 2, and 3, right? Those are their lead
Okay.
teach years. So I'm an instructional coach at the graduate level. So I support grads in their first, second, and third year of commitment, primarily focusing on science. But I have had the joy of supporting some elementary teachers these last 2 years, which has been so cool to expand my knowledge and have such a deeper view of education, K through 12. And also to just see that good teaching is good teaching, whether you are a kindergarten teacher or a 12th grade teacher. There is so much that is actually the same. So yeah, that's what I do. This year I took on some coursework within the MAT program. So I actually have had a lot more time with residents this year. I teach some of the science content. There's 2 science content classes that residents who are science teachers take. And I had the joy of teaching a classroom management and methods class last fall, which was really fun because that was kind of getting back to my dean of students grade level chair, thinking all things school culture and building relationships with kids. So that was really fun.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. Like, what did you learn from your time in school leadership that perhaps has translated well to your role here at MTR?
Oh yeah. I mean, I could go on and on about that. I think from teaching to entering leadership to now being able to train teachers, like there's kind of this cool, I don't know, closing of a circle maybe, you could kind of think about, where I've had the experience as a teacher, I've had the scope of being an administrator, and now being able to prepare teachers who are going to walk into hard work. Like, it does not matter, we are a highly effective teacher prep program. Um, but that doesn't mean the work is going to be easy when you get in the classroom. It is still hard. And it doesn't matter how long you're in it, it's still hard. It's just a different kind of hard. But I think I've enjoyed being able to remind people of assuming the best. We hear that a lot in education. You want kids to assume the best of each other. As colleagues, assume the best of your colleagues, but assuming the best of all parties, because the work is hard. um, I think the different perspectives I gained over the years, um, in my time in the classroom and my time as an administrator, are helpful. I love helping residents and grads brainstorm situations that seem hard. And
Mhm.
so thinking through, like, well, could this maybe be what's going on, whether it's a student issue or
Yeah. Yeah.
having trouble connecting with a family or feeling frustrated with something that's been rolled out from an admin team. So just being able to brainstorm possibilities, because I've walked a lot of those. Also helping brainstorm how to approach conversations. Conversations can be hard, whether it's
Yeah.
with a student or a family or, again, someone you work with. But um, that's an art and it's a skill to build. And I think teachers heading into this work, um, oftentimes that's an area for growth. It certainly was an area of growth for me. And so just being able to take lessons learned through the years and hopefully help other people learn them faster is,
Yeah.
I think, something that has really stood out over time with my transition to the work at MTR.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the previous guest, Kayla Small, she coaches principal. She's with the Great Lake Grad School or grad school grad. Yeah. And that was one of her things too, is just like seeing people as people, having empathy, right? And yeah, to your point, like having been a teacher, you have full empathy for like that, the hardships faced there. And then, yeah, as dean of students, not only do you have the empathy of an admin, but you've also gotten a little bit of a different view of families and students and like what's going on that teachers don't always get to see.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
just, that's not really their role, right? Like
Right.
it,
Right.
and so to have that empathy there and then to be able to, yeah, bring those all together to say, hey, you know what, like maybe we need a fuller picture. It's like, yes, I understand this is hard. And from your perspective, like it is hard. Maybe these are some other things that are happening. And so being able to just kind of come into any conversation in any situation with empathy for both has got to be super powerful and helpful for you just to build those relationships, not only with the
Mhm.
teachers you're working with, but also like the school leaders and other teachers that are at that building that you're not working with. And so it's just
Right.
being an advocate for all. So
Mhm.
okay, so yeah, so we've come a bit full circle again, right? Like you were in the classroom and then you kind of left into the admin role and now you're back. Spend, I think, a lot of your time, I would imagine, is in classrooms. Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's in classrooms, getting to observe and give feedback to teachers, co-plan. I love co-planning. I think that um, planning for effective instruction is such an easy thing to just fall through the cracks or fall to the wayside. But I think one of the most powerful classroom management tools is effective planning. And so
yeah,
I love co-planning. Usually throughout the year, I get to do some fun co-observations and get into classrooms of other great teachers. I think that is one of the most powerful things any educator can do, especially in their early years of their career, is like, who is the best teacher in your building, and go sit in the back of their
yeah,
classroom and just watch them,
yeah,
and take notes and ask questions. So being able to take grads that I support into other really effective teachers' classrooms is really fun for me. Um, Setting goals with grads and working alongside them is where I spend a lot of time. But yeah, just being in classrooms and getting to see teachers doing their things with kids is really fun. And that's the majority of what time looks like.
yeah. Well, yeah, well, I was going to ask you, yeah, what is your goal as a coach? But it sounds like, yeah, it's like effectively planning, like just like getting, I mean, because it's going to differ Yeah, because it's interesting that you've got the 1, 2, 3 grads, right? At there. So year one grad is, and well, do you work with them across the 3 years or do they change coaches each year?
They can change coaches each year. We strive to keep consistency as
Yeah,
much as possible across the board. So this year I have um, teachers that I coached last year who I have this
you're
year,
really able to.
which is really fun. And I'm super
Awesome.
hopeful that my first years that I've had this year, I will be with them through next year. So yeah,
Awesome.
you
That's
really get
awesome.
to see the growth over time. I believe a consistent coach is a really important part
Yeah.
of supporting teachers.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's gotta be. I mean, they just have seen the strengths and the weaknesses. Hey, dog.
Yeah, Harry.
Um, okay, so yeah, so this I found this really interesting and it was unintentional. So in episode one, like I said, I talked to Kayla and her job is coach principals. Then I talked to Stephen Ward. He's a principal, and obviously a big part of his job is to coach his teachers and his leadership team.
Mhm.
And then here I am, talking to you, which you are, and I'm going to use the wrong language, and so correct me where necessary, but like you're this external partner,
Mhm. Mhm.
with this residency program, and you're tasked with coaching teachers.
Mhm.
And I'm curious how this relationship between MTR and these various schools that you're working with, how they work, because
Yeah,
obviously every school is going to have their own mission, their own vision, their own culture.
right.
So or how does this partnership with schools, and maybe for you, it's maybe easier to think about like the leaders within that school, like
Mhm.
how does that
Yeah.
practically look?
Yeah, it's a big undertaking, right? Like we're a huge school district. Um, we're working with charter schools, we're working with district schools, we're working with state run districts within our district.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things at play. Um, but we have people on staff whose job is initiating those relationships, making sure that we are sustaining those, and then as coaches, a lot of that work and support with aligning the support we have for our grads in those schools, first stop is with the mentor, right? So we don't just choose mentors and say, here's a resident, have a great year.
Yeah.
There is intentional support for our mentors built in, both so that they have a lot of clarity for the expectations we have of our residents. We have a really methodical and intentional approach to strategies and things they need to focus on first in the year versus later, because again, teaching is it's taking an elephant and really needing like the one bite at a time mentality to get through it,
Yeah.
to train well. So we want mentors to have great clarity on what that looks like from our expectations, and we also want to be able to develop them. They have tracks that they get to choose throughout our mentor training that we do throughout the school year, whether it be certain book studies related to certain leadership topics. We provide content PD as well for mentors so that we, as we do our work and try and stay on top of all of the things coming out in the world of literacy and math and science and history instruction. When you're in the classroom, most of your energy is going towards your students and prepping your students well. So it's easy to miss out on opportunities to be developed and what's new and upcoming. So we provide that for mentors. So that's sort of like the first baseline of support and aligning the work that we do and having clarity around that.
Love that.
Um, and then, yes, there is getting to know the leaders that are in the building so that as instructional coaches are coming in, knowing who to go to if a teacher is really struggling and getting conflicting messages or feedback, being able to go and talk to those people and say, hey, like, what are you seeing in the classroom? What are y'all working on?
Yeah. Yeah.
I really want to make sure that we're focused on the same things, because
Yeah.
the worst thing that can happen and what's already hard work is being pulled in 2 different directions when you're
Yeah.
already pulled in 100 different directions every day. So just having that clarity is important. And we make sure that our partners at schools know they are free to reach out to us at any time. I know even when I was an administrator at my school, we would oftentimes have folks at MTR reach out to us to say, hey, here's what we're noticing. What are y'all noticing? And vice versa. And I think that that seeks to support teachers really well, being on as much of the same page as possible.
Yeah.
And then as we've been around for 15 years, we've gotten to know the culture of different schools and be able to stay abreast of changes that may be going on, big picture. How can we come alongside our grads to help them um, improve their own practice? So just a lot of transparency, to be honest, which is, I would be willing to say, a really crucial part of running a school. And then the work that we do coming alongside is necessary too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And that makes sense. I didn't even think about the like mentor teachers needing to be like, I was just thinking it more from an instructional coach or from a principal
Right.
standpoint and working and developing those relationships. But yeah, they spend their whole first year working underneath somebody and making sure that, I mean, that's a lot of pressure for that teacher too. So just to be able to say,
Right.
hey, thanks for taking time to not only do your work and to work with
Mhm.
our resident. Here are some ways in which we're going to, ensure that you're being developed and, getting the support too. So okay, so my company, CheckBox Pro, exists to help with sustainability for school leaders. And normally the job of a school leader would be to develop these teachers,
Yeah.
rather whether they're doing it themselves or maybe hiring full-time, instructional coaches, kind of like where you were at Soulsville at one point in time.
Mhm.
But here MTR is as this external partner residency program. You're doing the work of supporting teachers and developing them.
Mhm.
So, like in my mind, I'm kind of like, wait, does this mean that y'all are taking a little bit of a load off of
Mhm.
these school leaders? And the idea is intriguing to me. I don't know that that's actually true, but
Right.
it feels logical. So tell me, like, is that something that is happening? Where are you taking a load off of school leaders, principals, instructional coaches, so that they're able to reallocate that time to other teachers in their buildings? Um, and just, I mean, is that something you've seen or experienced?
Yeah. No, it's such an intriguing like thought. And I was sharing with you earlier that's something that like recently has been on my mind. I think for Memphis Teacher Residency, no, that's not what we're initially setting out to do, right? Like our goal is to get highly effective teachers in the classroom in these under-resourced areas so that those students have just as much access to the same or better education that's available in the city. I do think a positive consequence of that is oftentimes schools end up getting a great deal of support for a teacher that might be lightening a load for them to focus on some other um, fires in the building or
Yeah.
different priorities. But it's definitely not something we seek out to do. But like I said, I think it can result in that. I think in the best case scenario, we are supporting our teachers like we tell them that we will, and they're getting great support at their
Yeah.
schools, whether from the principal or in-house instructional coaches. Worst case scenario is we are supporting our teachers well, like we told them that we would,
Mhm.
and they're not getting that level of support in the building, but they're not alone
Yeah.
because we are shoulder to shoulder with them. So it definitely is intriguing to think about, though, as funding during and post peak pandemic allowed
Yeah.
schools to really get more help in buildings. We know that funding is not forever, and so it's going to greatly um, influence financial decisions at schools and what support for teachers looks like. Um, yeah, and in a
Yeah.
teacher shortage, it's all it's kind of the perfect storm of what does it look like to support teachers well in the environment we're currently working in.
Yeah. Yeah. Budgets are a real concern for, I mean, for everyone right now. And so, yeah, it's trying to think through like, are there programs
Mhm.
that they can recruit through, similar to Teach for America and now MTR, right? Like,
Mhm.
is that the route they go to find highly qualified people to teach
Yeah.
kids when there is that teacher shortage? Is it more cost effective, right, to outsource, whether that, I mean, I don't know if there are other programs like this. I think before you mentioned maybe there's consultancy groups or, more
Mhm.
along that lines. And is
Right.
that a creative way in which to
Right.
help your bottom line is, well, you
Yeah.
know what, I can't really afford to hire a full-time instructional coach or, three different content leads. I
Mm-hmm.
can't afford that. So, but I can strategically outsource this coaching to maybe
Right.
this, to develop these select teachers, maybe with these very,
Mm-hmm.
very particular
Yeah.
areas of struggle, but also a lot of areas of like, it's like this person's got a lot of potential. We really want to invest
Right.
in them. Um, which is kind of, twofold where you're
Yeah. Yeah.
helping your budget.
The really cool thing is we're not the only residency program in the country. In fact, listeners could check out the National Center for Teacher Residencies is a really great
Okay.
place to start with looking for other residency models around the country. So if you are leading schools, it could be cool to find out, is there a residency model close to you that you might tap into? Um, Certainly TFA and other teacher prep programs are out there as well. I think, you know, consultants do come to mind. I know at Soulsville, we worked for a long time with a consultancy group specifically around instruction and having people come through and help us really evaluate the level of instruction that is taking place, collecting data, debriefing it, setting some really intentional goals around what do we need to focus on first?
Yeah.
What could have the biggest impact on student learning? And I think there's lots of those out there, whether they're folks who have left education for family reasons, but they still want to stay in the game and are willing to come alongside schools to help do that level of work. I went through a leadership program early in my career called Leading Educators, which was focused on coaching me as a leader. And that had a big impact on running my team, I hope effectively, things that I like really enjoyed about learning how to work with a group of adults in a really effective way. So just as you were talking, it was also bringing me back to the idea of like leveraging the people in your building. There are
Yeah.
teachers who are
Yeah.
really, really extraordinary when it comes to content knowledge and being able to look at really high quality curriculum and also know where the gaps are, leverage them.
Yeah.
Um, Also compensate them where you can. You're asking
Right.
additional time of them.
Yeah.
But how can you leverage people in the building who are doing the work day to day to influence a content level team really effectively? So, whether that again is pouring into them in a leadership program where they can bear that fruit out with your staff, or leverage them for, running PLCs that have, they're ripe to be excellent uses of time
Yeah.
if the right people are leading those meetings well and rallying one another around effective instruction for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You may have answered one of my question or my next question in that, but I think you probably have more in there. So I'm going to dig a little deeper. So knowing that budgets are tight for schools, right? Outsourcing coaches or professional development, hiring a full-time instructor, like that might not be viable. Like it
Right.
might be not be a viable option for schools right now. So with that in mind, beyond just like your advice of like leveraging the people that are already in your building and yeah, like giving them a stipend, right? Like just it's that is like budget friendly. Like that is such a budget friendly and a great retention like tactic,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um, but is there other advice that would come to mind specifically for like instructional coaches or principals when it comes to observing teachers or coaching new teachers, um, just getting them to the level where they're being, being effective in the classroom and
Yeah.
just making the impact?
Yeah, I think first, before that can ever be effective, I think the school leadership really has to have strong alignment on what effective instruction looks like and how it's measured within the school building. Um, because if there's a lack of alignment in that, bringing someone in can just be confusing. And then asking for insight for whoever might be coming in and alongside to partner, like what is their area of expertise? What is it that they bring to the table? What are they looking for? And figuring out how those things can jive well together with the ultimate goal of supporting student learning.
Yeah.
I think that that is really what is important to always come back to, because it's easy to get off on all of these tangents that are still important, but ultimately it's about students and student learning. So there's got to be clarity and alignment with those things. I also think one of the most important things, whether it is in-house support or outsourced support or partner support, whatever that might look like, is really getting to know the teachers and having some context for what they're working on, what they personally are working on, what they've currently been working on with their principal or their instructional coach, where there have been wins, because I
Um,
think teachers need to have cheerleaders. And I
Yeah.
think an instructional coach, like a big thing that I seek to do for the people I support is to cheer them on and let them know
Yeah.
what is going well. I would not be 14 years into this if I had not, in my first 2 years, had a huge cheerleader constantly cheering me on,
Oh,
because I was not great at all in my first 2 years. But there were things that I was doing well, and I built on those, right? And
yeah.
so I don't think any of this work, no matter how aligned, how well intended, if we lose sight on building our teachers up where they are doing well, kids don't end up reaping the benefit of it. So there's really got to be alignment and balancing what we're working on in a really focused way with acknowledging where the wins are and how we're going to take those wins and multiply them,
Yeah.
for kids, because that is, I think that that's just a huge part of making that work effective. And we see that with our mentor teachers at MTR, right? Like they are very strategically coaching their residents every day, but it's not always what you're doing wrong. Fix this. It is, here is what is going really well today.
Um,
And like, let's just take time to celebrate that. Here's our next focus,
yeah.
coming on, because we've got to be able to feel the wins just like we do with our own students, right?
Yeah.
Here's what you're doing well. Here's what we're going to work on next.
I love that. I love that. All right. Well, I have one final question as we
Okay.
wrap up.
Yeah.
In the spirit of my company's name, okay, what is one box, big or small, that you hope to check off today?
Oh, I have some observations in some new teachers' classrooms that I've recently taken over supporting for the rest of the year.
Love it.
So I'm really excited to get into these classrooms. It's actually at my old school. It's a teacher I'm familiar with because she was a resident years ago.
Oh, that's so great.
But now I'm taking over support. So yeah, I'm going to get in that classroom, and that is a box I'm going to check today, and I'm super excited about it.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with me between work and 3 kids. I know your time is precious, so
Yes.
precious. And as you approach May, you told me earlier that y'all, gosh, you're getting ready for, you say your graduates this year, or you're ready to graduate this year's residents. So those
Yep.
are the little ones, the newest ones. Then you're celebrating the grads who are finishing their commitment. So yeah, so they've done 4 years in the work, which is great. And then you're welcoming a new class of residents, and that's really
Yep.
exciting. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so for anyone listening who is considering going into teaching, but doesn't have a degree and are open to living in Memphis, which I highly
Oh,
recommend. It's a great
so
city.
great.
It's a great city.
Yes.
Then you should consider MTR. The next round of applications opens in the fall.
Yeah.
And you can learn more at memphistr.org/residency. Again, that's memphistr.org/residency. And I'll go ahead and make sure to include that in the episode notes. But thank you so much, Kalli, seriously, for doing the work that you do, for supporting teachers, ensuring, again, Memphis has such a special place in my heart, but the work you do and the students that come out of Memphis will go on to do great things in Memphis and the cities that they choose to live in future. So it does have a multiplying effect, like you mentioned. So we appreciate you for being here, and yeah, until next time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.